President Trump is telling Americans to prepare for a very painful 2-week period as the coronavirus death toll continues to climb. CBS News White House correspondent Weijia Jiang is standing by to bring us the latest from Washington. Weijia, the numbers shared in yesterday's briefing marked a real stark contrast to what President Trump was saying just a few weeks ago. I got the sense watching that briefing yesterday that those of you in the White House press corps had not seen President Trump like this in quite some time.
Yeah, Vlad, during other times of crises, we have seen the president change his tone to a more serious one. But this was something completely different from that, because he wore on his face the fact that he understands what is ahead for Americans. He understands the numbers, and this was a remarkable way for him to present himself, because, as you mentioned, for weeks, frankly, he downplayed the virus, and that is not an opinion, that is not my analysis, that is going back and leafing through transcripts and looking at quotes and rewatching the president on television, telling Americans that this was not a big deal in some ways. You know, he compared it to the flu. He said that more people die every year of the flu, and so far we only have 15 cases. That was, several weeks ago. That's just one example, but we have those documents to show that his message was very, very different in the beginning. But last night, he could not have been more blunt, and his message was that Americans are dying and will continue to die, and more people will die if you don't do your part. So I think he's really taking this, with the gravity that he should. And from now on, we'll have to see if that sort of somber tone remains. But clearly, at least yesterday, he got it.
And, Weijia, we heard in Riley's package there, Governor Cuomo just talking about how frustrating it is to try to get his hands on more ventilators, that states are bidding against each other. And then I think he used the phrase bigfooting, that the federal government then is able to sort of bigfoot the states and also purchase ventilators from the handful of suppliers that are out there. I'm wondering if the president spoke about that. What's the latest on that front?
So President Trump said yesterday that the federal government does have 10,000 ventilators ready to go, ready to ship, but they are waiting because they know the surge is coming and they want to make sure they send machines to the right places when new hotspots appear. But this is not necessarily a new issue. Other governors have already raised this and said, look, you told us to try to get supplies on our own, which the president did about 2 weeks ago. And then they found that when they were putting in orders, the federal government was outbidding them. And at that time, President Trump said, if that's the case, give us a call and we will drop our bid. But according to Cuomo, it's still going on. And that's just adding to the frustration because they need these supplies to treat the people in their states. So right now, it seems that the administration is saying FEMA is involved and they're doing their part to make sure that, the passageways are clear and going to those areas that need them the most. But it doesn't really address the fact that this bidding is still going on. And by the way, I want to mention that we spoke to private companies as well who produce medical supplies, and they are literally begging for guidance from FEMA on where they should be sending their supplies, because right now they continue to send them to hospitals and different offices where they already have existing contracts. The problem is that those places are not necessarily in need. And these companies say they want to send their goods to hospitals that are seeing, the numbers increase every day. They want to make sure that they're going to specific jurisdictions that need them, but feel they're not in a position to make that call. For example, even though they are watching images out of New York City, they can't just say, okay, we're going to now send our supplies to New York City because of all those existing contracts with other hospitals in other parts of the country. So they are begging FEMA to give them some cover, because in the case that they do send them to places that really need these supplies, they don't want to face a lawsuit or other types of action. So they're also asking the government for guidance. I think, it's not a surprise because this is all developing so quickly. The president insists that they are working together to make sure every state gets what they need, but clearly that's not happening.
Weijia, let me ask you, we are talking about the governors and the fact that they have implored the federal government to assist them, but in the cases where they are unable to receive that assistance, they are doing it on their own. You've seen just here in New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo sort of grabbing the bull by the horns and taking charge. You've seen that in New Jersey, California, in Michigan, in Massachusetts, and now Florida, which has now just become what all medical experts are saying a hotspot for the coronavirus. You've got Republican Governor Ron DeSantis, who has not issued any mandatory stay-at-home orders. And a lot of people are wondering why he hasn't done that, why he hasn't closed down the restaurants. Governor DeSantis says he's waiting for President Trump, or he's waiting for the White House to give him that guidance. Contrast that with these other governors in states that I just mentioned that are saying, you know what, for the good of the citizens of my state, I'm going to go with whatever the White House recommends, and I'm going to take it an extra step further and implement life-saving measures that will protect the population. Are you hearing at all from the White House that President Trump, I guess what Governor DeSantis is saying is, I need a phone call. Are you hearing that the White House may actually do that?
You know, I actually asked Kellyanne Conway, who is an advisor to the president, that exact question a very short time ago right here at the White House. I said, considering President Trump's dire message to the country, is he considering asking DeSantis to order Floridians to stay at home and try to mitigate the spread? And, you know, she talked around it and she said the president has faith in the governors, that they will act based on what they think is best for their country. And so, you know, I think that was a no. It sounded like a no to me because, you know, she says that every governor has to do their part to analyze what's happening and make that call for their residents. At the same time, she said, you know, what I do want to mention is that yesterday the doctors showed models and showed that states that took action quickly are faring much better than those that did not. And so everyone should pay attention to those models. But there's a real hesitance here for the president to give any direct orders because, you know, it might be a philosophical debate, but he wants the states to preserve their authorities for now. I mean, he could just say, you know, there is a coast-to-coast shutdown, but he does not want to do that because he wants to preserve you know, those boundaries. But it's a great question because I think the other question is, why does he need a call? He's hearing from the doctors. He's hearing from President Trump. He's seeing what his colleagues are doing. And it's just hard to fathom why he needs the president to make a 30-second call to say, do it. I mean, I don't know if he wants some cover himself for any repercussions for shutting down the economy in the way that the rest of the country is doing. I can't speculate, but I think those local reporters down in Florida need to really be pressing him about why he needs somebody to tell him what to do when he is the leader of Florida.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting observation, Weijia, as I look at other countries like Italy, like Spain, like Canada, where sort of the individual, whether they're provinces or states, don't wield as much power. The federal government has been able to just sort of coast to coast shut everything down and have a more uniform way of tackling the coronavirus. I guess in the end, when we see the numbers, we'll figure out, you know, what worked better. But before we let you go, I want to ask you about something else. The FDA is setting up a program to expedite the development of coronavirus treatments. That sounds like very good news. Can you tell us any more about that, rather?
Well, you know, the president mentioned different treatments that seem to be doing well in clinical trials, and so they want to expedite that even, you know, without the normal length of time that researchers would give to these drugs, because these are desperate times. And so, you know, I know that our doctors at CBS, the best recommendation is to talk to your own physician about what could and could not work, but certainly the FDA is presenting these different options to people because it could be a matter of life and death, and there really is not that time to go through the normal channels and wait, the normal length of time to give that stamp of approval when we're already seeing anecdotally that they might be working. So I think it's just another signal of how serious this situation is. And again, doctors cannot stress enough that the best preventive medicine is social distancing.
All right, Weijia Jiang for us at the White House. Weijia, as always, we thank you. Be well, be safe. We'll talk to you soon.
You too. Thank you.